I want to start by saying that, we hear all the time about the bad things that go on in South Carolina, and we talk about the different things that happen. And I want to reiterate something I've said before, and that is that law enforcement in South Carolina is strong. Law enforcement in South Carolina is united. And nothing has been more evident to me than that over the last 36 hours. We have the unification of and the partnerships and the relationships of law enforcement in the state of South Carolina is second to none. The outpouring of support that we've received from every law enforcement agency in this state, at the state and local level and the federal level, the outpouring of support and the calls and everything. But I have to talk specifically about the agencies that responded to the scene on Sunday and that have responded to our need for support. We have had such a tremendous outpouring, and I just want to say thank you to the law enforcement agencies that are not only providing calls for service, not only providing us support emotionally, but also providing the support for us physically. I also want to thank our citizens of Cayce. The Cayce citizens are united around the Cayce Police Department and the Fire Department, who are going through a very, very difficult time. But the citizens in the community in this city are second to none as well. They have united around the police officers and the firefighters, and I am just so blessed and honored to be the police chief because we have the best citizens and we have the best partnerships. I want to talk about Molly, the canine. Our Officer Barr had Molly. Molly was a 6-year-old Labrador Retriever. Drew was her second handler, and she was committed to this city. She was very successful, and she was a trained narcotics and tracking dog. And everybody that came in contact with Molly loved her, and Drew loved Molly. Drew was her second handler, and Drew was able to help her be successful. And she was able to recover drugs, she was able to track suspects, and she was also able to interact with our kids and our youth in the community as well as the adults. And everybody, again, she is still a significant part and will continue to be a significant part of this city in honor and remembrance of Drew. Drew Barr was 28 years old. Drew Barr was murdered. Drew was known as a child for playing with fire trucks. He was known for playing with police cars. He was known in the community of Monetta. Many people have told the family and have told us that when they would call for EMS in the area, they would say, you can call 911, but don't bother, I'm calling Drew. Because they knew that they loved him and they knew that that he would care for them because he was a servant. And they knew how passionate he was about serving. He was a firefighter. He was a police officer. He became a police officer with the Cayce Police Department in 2016. He went to the Criminal Justice Academy in 2017. He was a patrol officer. He was then a traffic safety officer. He then became a canine handler in October of 2020. He was promoted to that position because that's what he was passionate about. He wanted to continue to further his career. Interestingly enough, about a week ago, he had gone to the deputy chief and talked to him about having a formal meeting because he wanted to talk about his career and he wanted to talk about how he could continue to serve the community and how he could get better and what were the things that he needed to do to continue to get better as a person and what he could continue to do to get better as a police officer. And I want people to remember Drew and remember his service because he was committed to being a firefighter, an EMT, and a police officer. We've been very specific and purposeful over the last day in how we are going to progress and how we're going to deal with this tragedy. From the moment the incident occurred, we had an outpouring of support from the Lexington County Sheriff's Department, the Richland County Sheriff's Department, the West Columbia Police Department, the Springdale Police Department, the City of Columbia Police Department, and the list just continues to go on and on. But we've been very specific about caring for our officers because they are going through a very traumatic time. And this is police officers and firefighters. And we have to make sure that they're cared for. They've been receiving counseling. We've been praying with them. We've been crying with them. We've been hugging them, and we're going to continue to do that. And we've got to continue to do that. And we've got to make sure that we're very purposeful in that. So we've been setting up meetings over the last several hours and the last several days. And the goal is to make sure that we are connected with them and they are connected with us. And we have been very technical and tactful in how we've done that, making sure that we're focused on them and we're focused on Drew. Those were our two priorities. But our other priority was the Barr family. We're not worried about anything else other than those three things, and making sure that the Barr family has everything that they need to process what's going on and make sure that they have everything that they need going forward, because they're not going to be forgotten, nor is Drew. We have been waited to have this press conference today because we wanted to make sure that we had everything in place that we needed to make sure that the Barr family was taken care of, our police officers and our firefighters were taken care of, but also to make sure that our city is safe. And I have to commend Chief Boyce and the West Columbia Police Department and the other agencies that have rounded around them to make sure that we have patrol officers out, we have investigations out, we have crime suppression and crime fighting going on and crime prevention going on, and we have not missed a beat. This city is safe, and it is safe as it was on Saturday and as it is tomorrow, and it will be for time to come. And it's because of agencies like the West Columbia Police Department that we are able to grieve and we are able to mourn like we are. And so I'm really, really appreciative of the support that I've received from them and that the city continues to receive. But the city needs to know that they are safe and that they are protected and that they are taken care of from a fire capacity as well as a law enforcement capacity. That is not going to change, and that is not going to waver. And everybody needs to understand that. The other thing I want to do today is I want to talk specifically about the incidents on Sunday morning. And I want to be very specific about what I'm about to say. Drew was murdered. He was murdered. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And we know that because the evidence of what SLED is doing for us in finding out what happened, they've identified some very specific things that we know occurred, and these are the things that we know occurred. We know that we responded at 2:48 a.m. to 118 Rossmore Drive in Concord Park to a domestic disturbance with a man with a gun, specifically a man with a rifle. We know that the woman inside the house called from her Apple phone, her Apple Watch. She called in distress. She called for help. And our officers didn't miss a beat, and they responded. Dispatch the officers. We had one officer arrive at 2:49, moment after she called. The first officer arrived at 2:49. The second officer, who was Officer Barr, responded immediately thereafter. Third and fourth officer also arrived. When Officer Barr responded, a man had met us in the front yard. He was a family friend. We know that he was there. We know that he had been involved, and they were involved in a party most of the day. And we know that he left the home because there was a domestic that occurred inside the home, and he was uncomfortable and he felt like he needed to leave. He left. He was handcuffed in the yard by our officers. We know that Austin, the suspect, moved upstairs to an elevated position with a rifle and tracked our officers as they pulled in. We know that he made a calculated decision to shoot at our officers, and he fired one round, striking Drew and killing him immediately. He killed him. We know that our other officers responded to the scene, and they attempted to render aid. They attempted to move Drew to a position of cover because a second shot was fired. The officers attempted to render aid and move Drew to a patrol car to get him to the hospital, where EMS actually met us at another entrance that was near the neighborhood. They transferred him to the ambulance, and he was taken to the hospital. We know that, again, that our initial officer arrived at 2:49. Barr, Drew responded and was the second officer. We had a third and fourth officer. We know at 2:52 a second shot rang out. We know that our officers called for help. Multiple agencies responded, and the suspect barricaded himself inside the home. We know that at some point he moved the wife and the daughter and placed them into a closet inside the home. Those are the facts that we know based on the evidence that's been recovered at the scene. We know that he used a rifle. We know that he fired and that he was calculated in what he did. He murdered our officer, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I will say, and this is very, very important, we have all, as a department and as a city, been praying for the wife and the child involved in this, because they are also victims of what happened. They were victims of domestic violence, and they're victims of what occurred inside that home, as well as the shots that were fired and everything else that has transpired since then. They are also victims, and we as a community and as a city need to continue to pray for them, and we will. A couple other things I want to mention is that there has been some GoFundMe pages that are falsely out there. The family has only approved one GoFundMe page to be out there and in existence and to receive money, and that is Jason Flint, F-L-Y-N-T. The only thing the family asks is that if there's money out there that people want to provide to support the family, that goes to that GoFundMe page or goes to the Cayce Public Safety Foundation in honor of Drew for the K-9 unit. Those are the only two things that the family wants. We need to honor the family's wishes. If you falsely produce a GoFundMe page, we will prosecute you. We have been researching that. We are working with different organizations to help us with that, and we will not tolerate that because the family does not need that. We don't need to be doing that right now. So we need to focus on that. So our goal is to continue to focus on the family. We're going to continue to focus on Drew's honor and memory. We're going to continue to focus on our officers, our firefighters, and this community, and we are going to be stronger for it. We are going to be united around this city and around this department and around the firefighters and everybody. Thank you.